Marlo Sinclair, 34, never expected her family's Sunday dinner to derail her entire life. When her parents casually suggested she give up her downtown apartment to her brother because family comes first, she nodded politely. What they didn't know, she had just discovered documents proving her perfect brother had secretly borrowed against their grandmother's house, the house that was meant to be Marlo's inheritance. Before I dive deeper into this family betrayal that changed everything, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy real-life family drama with unexpected twists. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma finally caught up with the golden child. Now let's rewind to how this all started. Marlo had always been the responsible one. Growing up in suburban Boston, she did everything right: straight A's through school, prestigious college scholarship, and now a respected position at an architectural firm. Her two-bedroom apartment in Beacon Hill wasn't just a home. It was a testament to her independence, purchased entirely with her own savings after years of living frugally. The hardwood floors, bay windows, and rooftop garden represented every sacrifice she had made, while her younger brother Tyler had life handed to him on a silver platter. Sunday dinners at her parents' house had been a tradition since childhood. Even as an adult, Marlo made the 30-minute drive every weekend to her parents' colonial-style home in Newton. Her mother Vivian would prepare elaborate meals, and her father Richard would regale them with stories from his law practice. Tyler would usually arrive late if at all, but somehow would still receive most of their parents' attention. This particular Sunday seemed normal at first. Marlo arrived promptly at 5 p.m. with a bottle of wine and helped her mother finish preparing dinner. The familiar scent of her mother's pot roast filled the kitchen, and classical music played softly in the background. Everything felt comfortable, predictable. Marlo had even worn her favorite navy blue dress, thinking it would be an ordinary evening with her family. When Tyler finally arrived 45 minutes late as usual, their parents beamed with pride. He announced he'd recently been promoted at the financial firm where he worked, which prompted their father to pour the expensive scotch he reserved for special occasions. Marlo congratulated her brother sincerely, despite knowing that his promotion likely had more to do with his connections through their father than his own merit. During dinner, conversation flowed as it always did. Her mother discussed neighborhood gossip, her father complained about politics, and Tyler dominated the conversation with stories about his glamorous social life. Marlo spoke about her recent project at work, redesigning a historic building downtown, but noticed how quickly her parents steered the conversation back to Tyler's accomplishments. It was during dessert, her mother's homemade apple pie, when her father cleared his throat in that way that always indicated he had something important to say. "Marlo, honey, we wanted to talk to you about something." Richard began exchanging glances with Vivian. "Your brother is starting a family now. Emma's pregnant." Marlo nearly dropped her fork. This was the first she'd heard about her brother's girlfriend being pregnant. She forced a smile. "Congratulations, Tyler. That's wonderful news." "Thank you," Tyler replied with that characteristic smirk that had always irritated Marlo. "We're really excited. The thing is," her father continued, "they're going to need more space. That one-bedroom apartment they're in now simply won't do for a baby." Marlo nodded, waiting for her father to get to the point. Was he going to ask her to help them find a larger place? As an architect, she did have connections in real estate. "We were thinking," her mother jumped in, "since you live alone in that two-bedroom apartment of yours and it's really more space than a single person needs." The implication hung in the air for a moment before Marlo understood. "Wait, are you suggesting I give Tyler my apartment?" Her father nodded, as if this were the most reasonable request in the world. "Family comes first, sweetheart. Your brother needs that space more than you do. You could easily find a smaller place, maybe a nice studio somewhere." Marlo felt her chest tighten. The apartment she had worked so hard for saved every penny to afford decorated with such care. They expected her to simply hand it over to Tyler, who had never worked for anything in his life. It's not just about space, her mother added. The school district is excellent and you know how important education is. I bought that apartment, Marlo said quietly. With my own money. It's not just some extra space I don't need. It's my home. Don't be selfish, Marlo, Tyler interjected. This is about my child, your future, niece or nephew. Don't you want what's best for them? Marlo looked around the table at her family, her parents' expectant faces, her brother's entitled expression. In that moment, something inside her shifted. A lifetime of putting family first, of being the perfect accommodating daughter, suddenly felt like a weight she could no longer carry. I need to think about this, she finally said, knowing that what she really needed was to escape before she said something she couldn't take back. As she drove home that night, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, Marlo realized this request was merely the culmination of a lifetime pattern. Her needs had always been secondary to Tyler's. Her accomplishments were acknowledged but never celebrated like his were. And now they wanted to take the one thing she had built entirely on her own and give it to him simply because he wanted it. But little did they know Marlo had recently uncovered something that would change everything about their family dynamic. Something that would make their casual expectation that she sacrifice for Tyler one last time feel even more outrageous. 1 week before the infamous dinner, Marlo had been helping her grandmother Eleanor organize some paperwork. At 89, Eleanor was still sharp as a tack but admitted her filing system needed updating. Marlo had always been close to her grandmother, who, unlike her parents, never compared her to Tyler. Eleanor had raised Marlo's father as a single mother after her husband died in the Korean War, working 2 jobs to provide for her son. She understood hard work and sacrifice in a way Marlo's parents seemed to have forgotten. Eleanor lived in a modest but charming Cape Cod-style house in Cambridge, purchased in the 1960s, when the neighborhood was still affordable. Over the decades, as the area became increasingly desirable, the property had significantly appreciated in value. For years, Eleanor had told Marlo that the house would be hers someday. Your brother will be well taken care of by your parents, Eleanor had confided. This house will be your security. That afternoon, as they sorted through decades of documents in Eleanor's attic, Marlo found a folder labeled House Papers. Curious, she opened it, expecting to find the original deed or insurance documents. Instead, she discovered a stack of loan agreements, second and third mortgages taken out against the house over the past 5 years. Eleanor's home, once paid off, now had less than 20% equity remaining. Grandma Marlo asked, holding up the papers, "What are these? Did you take out loans against the house?" Eleanor looked confused. "No, dear. The house has been paid off for decades." Marlo's stomach dropped as she examined the documents more carefully. The borrower's signature on each loan document was indeed Eleanor's, but something about it looked off. And the co-signer on each loan was none other than Tyler. "Did Tyler help you get these loans?" Marlo asked carefully. "What loans? I never needed any loans," Eleanor insisted, becoming agitated. "Let me see those." As Eleanor reviewed the documents, her face paled. "I never signed these. This isn't my signature." A cold realization washed over Marlo. The power of attorney document her grandmother had signed years ago, intended only for emergency medical decisions, had somehow been used by Tyler to take out loans against Eleanor's house. Loans that, according to the payment records also in the folder, were in default. "Tyler comes by sometimes with papers for me to sign," Eleanor said quietly. "He says they're just updates to my will or medical forms. I trusted him." Marlo felt sick. Not only had her brother apparently forged documents to steal their grandmother's equity, but he had also manipulated an elderly woman who trusted him. The house that was supposed to be Marlo's inheritance, her security, was now at risk of foreclosure. She couldn't confront him immediately, she needed proof, legal advice, and a plan. She made copies of all the documents, and spent the next week consulting discreetly with a lawyer friend. The advice was clear. This was elder financial abuse and forgery, both serious crimes. But prosecuting would mean publicly accusing her brother, potentially sending him to jail, and exposing her grandmother to the stress of legal proceedings. Marlowe decided to gather more evidence before making any moves. She needed bank records showing where the money had gone, proof that Tyler had been the one submitting the loan documents, and confirmation that the signatures were forged. She planned to approach her parents privately once she had irrefutable proof, hoping they would help convince Tyler to make restitution without involving the courts. And then came the Sunday dinner with its outrageous request that she give up her apartment to the very person who had secretly been stealing from their grandmother. As Marlowe pulled into her apartment building's garage that night after the dinner, the weight of her discovery felt even heavier. Her family didn't just favor Tyler, they actively expected Marlowe to sacrifice her own security for someone who was criminally betraying their grandmother. Did her parents know about the loans? Were they complicit or just willfully blind to Tyler's true character? Sitting in her parked car, Marlowe made a decision. She would not give up her apartment. More importantly, she would not remain silent about what she had discovered. The time for being the accommodating daughter, the one who never rocked the boat, was over. Tyler had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and her parents' request had only strengthened her resolve to finally stand up for herself and for her grandmother. Tomorrow she would begin gathering the remaining evidence she needed. By the next family dinner, she would be ready to expose the truth, regardless of the fallout. The perfect daughter was about to shatter the family's perfect facade. Marlowe called in sick to work on Monday, something she had never done without genuine illness in her 8 years at the architectural firm. The situation warranted her full attention. Her grandmother's financial future and her own inheritance were at stake. She began by visiting 3 different banks where the loans had originated. At Commonwealth Bank, the first on her list, Marlowe approached the loan officer with a carefully crafted story. "I'm helping my grandmother organize her finances, and we found these loan documents. She's a bit confused about the details, and I wanted to get some clarification." She presented the paperwork with Eleanor's supposedly signed application. The loan officer, a middle-aged woman named Brenda with sympathetic eyes, reviewed the documents. "I remember this case," she said after a moment. "Your brother brought these in. He had the power of attorney paperwork, and said your grandmother wasn't mobile enough to come in person." "Did you speak with my grandmother at any point to verify?" Marlowe asked. Brenda looked uncomfortable. "We called the number provided on the application. Someone identified themselves as Eleanor Sinclair and confirmed the application. It's standard procedure." Marlowe nodded, suspecting that either Tyler had someone impersonate their grandmother, or worse, coerced Eleanor into confirming during one of his visits. "Would you have video of when these documents were signed?" "For security purposes, we do keep security footage, but only for 90 days, Brenda replied. "These loans are from over a year ago." The pattern repeated at the other 2 banks. Tyler had used the power of attorney document to apply for the loans, sometimes appearing in person, other times submitting applications online. In each case, a verification call had been made to Eleanor, but no one had insisted on meeting her in person. Marlowe's next step was to consult a forensic handwriting expert. Dr. Lillian Chen had been recommended by her lawyer friend as one of the best in Boston. Marlowe brought both the loan documents and several samples of her grandmother's authentic signatures, from birthday cards, her will, and other official documents. Dr. Chen examined them carefully under a magnifying glass and then digitally scanned them for computer analysis. "These signatures on the loan documents are what we call simulation forgeries," she explained after her examination. someone attempting to copy your grandmother's signature, but there are telltale hesitation marks and unnatural pen lifts that wouldn't be present in a genuine signature. Would your analysis hold up in court? Marlowe asked. Absolutely. I've testified in over 200 cases, Dr. Chen assured her. I can provide a detailed written report within a week. Marlowe's third step was to follow the money. Where had the $675,000 from these loans gone? She visited Eleanor again, this time with a specific purpose. Grandma, I need to check something on your computer if that's okay, she asked gently. Eleanor, still shaken from the discovery of the fraudulent loans, agreed immediately. Whatever you need, dear. I want to get to the bottom of this too. Marlowe logged into Eleanor's email account, which her grandmother rarely used. As she suspected, there were confirmation emails from the banks about the loans, but they had all been marked as read and moved to a folder labeled Financial. There were also emails from Tyler, asking for Eleanor's social security number, birth certificate details, and other personal information, always with seemingly innocent explanations. Most damning of all was an email exchange where Tyler had asked Eleanor to confirm a phone call she would receive from my financial advisor and to simply say yes to the questions asked. The date matched the verification call for the largest of the 3 loans. Next, Marlowe drove to the county recorder's office. She needed the original power of attorney document that Tyler had used to authorize these transactions. What she found confirmed her suspicions. The document on file was not the limited medical power of attorney her grandmother had signed years ago, but a comprehensive financial power of attorney with a signature date just 3 years prior. This isn't right, Marlowe muttered to herself as she made copies. The original document had been replaced with a forgery that gave Tyler complete control over Eleanor's finances. By Friday, Marlowe had compiled a damning dossier: bank statements showing the loan proceeds had been transferred directly to accounts in Tyler's name. The forged power of attorney document, Dr. Chen's preliminary report confirming the signature forgeries, and emails demonstrating Tyler's deliberate deception of their grandmother. What she still didn't have was concrete evidence of how Tyler had spent the money. The bank statements showed large withdrawals and transfers, but not the final destination of the funds. For that, she would need access to Tyler's personal financial records, which she had no legal way to obtain. As she organized the evidence in a secure folder, Marlowe's phone lit up with a text from her mother. Don't forget dinner on Sunday. Your father and I expect an answer about the apartment. Tyler and Emma will be there with the ultrasound pictures. Marlowe stared at the message, anger and determination crystallizing within her. She had planned to approach her parents privately with the evidence, hoping to resolve the situation quietly for Eleanor's sake. But their continued pressure about the apartment, their blatant favoritism toward Tyler, even as he committed crimes against his own grandmother, it was too much. Sunday dinner would happen, but not the way her parents expected. Marlowe would bring her evidence, and for once in her life the perfect daughter would force her family to face an uncomfortable truth. Tyler wasn't the golden child they believed him to be, and it was time everyone knew it. As she prepared for the confrontation, Marlowe couldn't help wondering, did her parents truly know nothing about Tyler's actions, or had they been covering for him all along? Either way, by Sunday night, the Sinclair family dynamic would be forever changed. Sunday arrived with an unusual spring thunderstorm, rain lashing against windows, and thunder rumbling in the distance, nature's dramatic backdrop for what Marlowe knew would be an explosive family dinner. She dressed carefully in a structured black blazer over a crimson blouse, an outfit that made her feel armored for battle. The evidence folder containing everything she had gathered throughout the week sat on the passenger seat of her car, like an improvised explosive device. As she drove through the rain-slicked streets toward her parents' home, Marlowe rehearsed what she would say, how she would present her findings. Should she wait until after dinner, confront Tyler privately first, include her grandmother in the conversation? By the time she pulled into the familiar driveway, she had settled on a direct approach. No more tiptoeing around difficult truths to maintain family harmony. "You're late," her mother noted when she opened the door, taking in Marlowe's serious expression and the folder tucked under her arm. "And you look like you're heading to a business meeting, not a family dinner." "In a way I am," Marlowe replied, stepping inside and shaking raindrops from her hair. In the living room, her father was pouring champagne. Tyler and his girlfriend Emma sat on the couch looking smug and entitled. Emma's hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach. "There she is," her father called out. "We're celebrating tonight. Come get some champagne." "I'll pass," Marlowe said. "I need a clear head for what I have to say." A momentary silence fell across the room. Her mother laughed nervously. "Well, someone's being dramatic. Come on, dinner's ready." At the dining table laden with her mother's roast chicken and spring vegetables, Marlowe sat directly across from Tyler, studying his face. Did he have any remorse, any concern that his crimes might be discovered? If so, he hid it well behind his practiced smile. "So Marlowe," her father began after they'd started eating, "have you given any more thought to what we discussed last week?" "About the apartment," Marlowe placed her fork down carefully. "I have, actually. I've thought about it a lot." And her mother leaned forward expectantly. "And I've decided that not only am I keeping my apartment, but I'm also here tonight to discuss something much more serious." Marlowe opened her folder and placed the first document, the forged power of attorney, on the table. "I'd like to know why Tyler has been systematically stealing from Grandma Eleanor by taking out fraudulent loans against her house." The silence that followed was absolute. Emma's fork clattered against her plate. Tyler's face drained of color, then flushed deep red. Her father sat frozen, fork halfway to his mouth. Her mother's hand flew to her throat in what Marlowe couldn't help noticing seemed more like rehearsed shock than genuine surprise. "What are you talking about?" Tyler finally sputtered. That's crazy." "Is it?" Marlowe placed the loan documents on the table one by one. 3 loans totaling $675,000, all taken out against Grandma's house using a forged power of attorney document. "All the money transferred directly to your accounts, Tyler." "Marlowe, this is hardly appropriate dinner conversation," her mother interjected weakly. "I disagree," Marlowe countered. "I think stealing from your elderly grandmother is what's inappropriate. The conversation is just uncomfortable." Her father picked up one of the documents, examining it with his lawyer's eye. "These could be legitimate. Eleanor might have agreed to help Tyler with some investments." "She didn't," Marlowe said firmly. "I've spoken with her extensively. She had no knowledge of these loans. Furthermore," she placed Dr. Chen's preliminary report on the table. "I've had a forensic handwriting expert analyze the signatures. They're forgeries." Tyler pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and be accused." "Sit down." Marlowe's voice was quiet but carried such authority that Tyler complied automatically. "I've spent the week gathering evidence. I have bank records, emails, testimony from loan officers. I know exactly what you did and how you did it. The only thing I don't know is why my parents aren't more shocked right now." Her mother and father exchanged a glance that confirmed Marlowe's suspicions. They knew something. Maybe not everything, but they weren't completely in the dark. "Did you know about this?" Marlowe demanded, looking directly at her father. Richard Sinclair, the respected attorney, couldn't meet his daughter's gaze. "I knew Tyler had some financial difficulties. I knew he had asked Eleanor for help. I didn't know the details." "You knew he was forging documents and committing elder fraud?" Marlowe pressed. "No, of course not," her father insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Emma, who had been silent until now, suddenly stood up. "I think I should leave. This seems like a family matter." "Stay," Marlowe said. You're carrying my future niece or nephew, right? You should know what kind of man the father is. Emma hesitated, then slowly sat back down, her expression troubled. Tyler, explain yourself, Richard demanded, finding his voice at last. Tyler's face had shifted from shock to calculation. Marlowe recognized the look. He was formulating a story, finding an angle to minimize the damage. It's not what it looks like, he began. Grandma and I had an understanding. She wanted to help me get started with some investments. The market turned, I lost some money, but I've been planning to pay it all back. With what money? Marlowe challenged. You're 3 months behind on the loan payments. The banks are threatening foreclosure on her house. Where did the $675,000 go? Tyler's eyes darted to Emma, then back to the table. Investments, like I said, some didn't pan out. What investments specifically? Marlowe pushed. When Tyler remained silent, Marlowe pulled out her final piece of evidence: bank statements showing large transfers to offshore accounts and luxury purchases. Designer clothes, first-class trips to Europe, a boat, a down payment on a vacation property in the Berkshires that's only in your name. These aren't investments, Tyler. This is theft and fraud. Her mother began to cry softly. Her father's face had gone ashen. Emma stared at Tyler as if seeing him for the first time. You told me the boat belonged to your college friend, Emma said quietly. You told me the Berkshires property was an investment with your work colleagues. Tyler reached for her hand, but Emma pulled away. Don't touch me. Is this true? Did you steal from your grandmother? When Tyler didn't answer, Emma stood up again. I need air. I can't be here right now. She grabbed her purse and walked out the front door, slamming behind her. Now look what you've done, Tyler hissed at Marlowe. Are you happy now that you've ruined everything? I didn't ruin anything, Marlowe replied calmly. You did that all on your own. Her father cleared his throat. What do you want, Marlowe? Why bring all this to the dinner table instead of coming to me privately? The question ignited something in Marlowe. Why? Perhaps because last week at this very table you asked me to give up my home for Tyler. Perhaps because my entire life you've expected me to sacrifice for him while he takes whatever he wants without consequence. Perhaps because I suspected you already knew something was wrong and chose to ignore it. She turned to face her brother directly. Here's what's going to happen. You have 2 options. Option 1, you liquidate your assets, sell the boat, the vacation property, whatever else you bought with Grandma's money, and repay every penny you stole plus interest. You confess to Grandma and beg her forgiveness. You seek therapy for whatever is broken inside you that made you think this was acceptable. And option 2, Tyler asked, a defiant edge returning to his voice. I take all of this. Marlowe gestured to the documents spread across the table to the district attorney. Tomorrow morning. Financial elder abuse is a felony in Massachusetts. You could face up to 10 years in prison. The magnitude of his situation finally seemed to register with Tyler. His shoulders slumped, the arrogance draining from his posture. You wouldn't do that to your own brother, her mother pleaded. Think about the baby, about our family's reputation. Marlowe looked at her mother, truly seeing her for the first time, not as the nurturing maternal figure she'd idealized, but as someone who had enabled Tyler's worst behaviors for years. I'm thinking about Grandma Eleanor, who worked her entire life to secure that house, who planned to pass it on to me because she knew Tyler would be taken care of by you two. I'm thinking about how Tyler betrayed her trust in the most fundamental way. And yes, I'm thinking about my future niece or nephew who deserves a father who understands consequences and responsibility. She gathered her documents, returning them to the folder. You have until next Sunday to start making this right, Tyler. If I don't see concrete steps toward restitution by then, I go to the DA. As Marlowe stood to leave, her father reached for her arm. Wait, please. Let's discuss this rationally. There must be a way to handle this privately. I've given the private option, Marlowe replied, gently removing his hand. It's up to Tyler now. At the door, she turned back one last time. Oh, and in case there was any confusion, I will not be giving up my apartment. Not now, not ever. As she stepped out into the rain, her phone pinged with a text message from Emma. Can we talk? I'm at the coffee shop down the street. Marlo took a deep breath, feeling both drained and strangely energized. The confrontation had gone largely as she'd expected, but the night wasn't over yet. Whatever Emma wanted to discuss could be another piece of this complicated family puzzle. You know, I have to pause here and say, this confrontation was one of the most difficult moments of my life. It's not easy standing up to family, even when you know you're right. Have you ever had to confront someone you love about something serious? Drop a comment below about how you handled it, and don't forget to like this video if you're enjoying this family drama saga. The twists are just getting started. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Marlo arrived, the Sunday evening crowd thinned by the persistent storm. Emma sat in a corner booth, cradling a mug of tea between her hands, her eyes red-rimmed and mascara slightly smudged. When she saw Marlo, she straightened up, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for coming," Emma said, as Marlo slid into the booth across from her. "I didn't know who else to talk to." Marlo signaled to the barista for a coffee before turning her full attention to Emma. She and Tyler's girlfriend had never been close. Emma had always seemed to adopt Tyler's dismissive attitude toward Marlo at family gatherings. Yet now she looked vulnerable, almost fragile. "I had no idea," Emma began, her voice barely above a whisper. "About any of it. The loans, the forgeries, the money. Tyler told me his parents helped with the down payment on the boat. He said the Berkshire's property was an investment opportunity through his firm." She looked up at Marlo, her eyes searching. "How did I not see this?" "Tyler has spent a lifetime perfecting the art of deception," Marlo replied gently. "He's charming, persuasive, and has always been enabled by our parents." Emma nodded slowly. "The pregnancy. It wasn't planned. We've only been together for 8 months. When I told him, he seemed excited, but immediately started talking about needing more space, a better place to raise a child." She twisted her napkin nervously. "That's when he first mentioned your apartment." "My apartment?" Marlo asked, confused. "This plan has been in the works for a while then. About 3 weeks ago, Tyler mentioned that his sister, you had this perfect apartment in an excellent school district. He said you barely used the second bedroom, that it was just a home office. He said it would be the perfect nursery." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "He made it sound like you had already discussed it, that you were open to the idea of moving out so we could move in." Marlo's coffee arrived, providing a moment to process this new information. Tyler had been planning this for weeks, manipulating their parents into making the request on his behalf. She wondered if he had chosen this approach because he needed somewhere to live when Eleanor's house inevitably went into foreclosure, cutting off his access to any further loans. "The thing is," Emma continued after Marlo had taken a sip of her coffee, "I'm not sure I want to be with Tyler anymore. Even before tonight, things haven't been right. He's secretive about finances, disappears for hours without explanation, and there's this entitled attitude that I initially found confident, but now just seems cruel." She placed a protective hand over her stomach. "But there's the baby to consider. Do you have family nearby, people who can support you?" Marlo asked. Emma shook her head. "I'm from Oregon originally. Moved here for work 3 years ago. My parents are still out west and we're not particularly close." Marlo found herself in an unexpected position. This woman, practically a stranger despite their family connection, was reaching out for help. The architect in Marlo, the part that meticulously planned and problem-solved, began working through possibilities. "I may have an idea," Marlo said slowly. "But first I need to know something. Are you willing to help me ensure Tyler makes restitution to our grandmother?" Emma didn't hesitate. "Yes. Whatever was stolen should be returned. I want no part of ill-gotten gains, especially not from an elderly woman." Good. Marlo nodded. Because I think there's a way to help both you and my grandmother, but it will require your cooperation. Over the next hour, as the rain continued to drum against the coffee shop windows, Marlowe and Emma formed an unlikely alliance. Emma revealed that she had access to Tyler's personal laptop and email accounts. He had shared passwords early in their relationship as a gesture of transparency. She also disclosed that Tyler had confided in her about various financial dealings that in retrospect seemed questionable at best. He mentioned once that he had documents in a safe deposit box, Emma recalled. Said it was insurance in case certain business associates ever turned on him. I think he meant it to sound impressive, like he was some kind of power player, but now I wonder what those documents really are. We need to find out, Marlowe said. If Tyler has been forging documents to steal from Grandma, he might have done the same to others. They developed a plan. Emma would return to the apartment she shared with Tyler, ostensibly to collect some belongings, and would copy any relevant financial documents she could find. She would also check his emails for correspondence with banks or other financial institutions. Meanwhile, Marlowe would consult with her lawyer friend about Emma's legal position as an expectant mother, with no involvement in Tyler's crimes. What about your parents? Emma asked, as they were preparing to leave. Do you think they really knew what Tyler was doing? Marlowe sighed. I'm not sure. My father is an attorney. He should have recognized the signs of financial fraud. At minimum, they chose not to look too closely at Tyler's sudden wealth. At worst, they were complicit. She met Emma's gaze. Either way, they can't be trusted right now. This stays between us. As they exchanged phone numbers and finalized details, Marlowe felt a strange sense of kinship with Emma. They were both victims of Tyler's manipulation, albeit in different ways. And now they were both determined to set things right. The next morning, Marlowe called in to work again, explaining to her understanding boss that the family emergency was ongoing. She spent the morning consulting with her lawyer friend Jason Kim about both Eleanor's case and Emma's situation. Emma needs protection, Jason advised. If Tyler is charged with financial crimes, his assets could be frozen or seized. She needs to establish independence quickly. What about the baby? Marlowe asked. Does Tyler have any claim if Emma decides to leave him? He has paternal rights, but given the circumstances, Emma would likely be granted primary custody if she seeks it, Jason explained. The financial fraud doesn't automatically make him an unfit parent, but it certainly doesn't help his case. By noon, Emma texted with her first findings, screenshots of emails between Tyler and someone named Victor, discussing documents that need adjusting for several clients. There was also a mention of the old lady's house and maximum equity extraction that clearly referred to Eleanor. There's more, Emma texted. Found statements for 3 offshore accounts. Balances total around $400K. This was significant. Tyler had claimed the money was lost in failed investments, but here was evidence that a substantial portion still existed hidden away in tax havens. If they could document these accounts properly, they could potentially force Tyler to repatriate the funds to repay Eleanor. Marlowe spent the afternoon with her grandmother, gently explaining more of what she had discovered. Eleanor's initial shock had given way to a quiet anger that Marlowe had never seen in her before. I trusted that boy, Eleanor said, her voice steady despite her evident distress. Gave him cookies after school, attended every baseball game, taught him to play chess. And this is how he repays that love. We're going to fix this, Grandma Marlowe promised. One way or another, we'll make it right. Eleanor reached for Marlowe's hand. You know, I always told your grandfather that you were the strong one. Even as a little girl, you had this sense of justice, this backbone. Tyler could charm the birds from the trees, but you were the one who would stand firm when it mattered. Marlowe felt tears prick at her eyes. Throughout her life, she had often felt overshadowed by Tyler's charisma, but her grandmother had always seen her true worth. That evening, Emma called with explosive news. I found the safe deposit box key, she said, her voice vibrating with excitement. And I know which bank it's at. There's a statement from Boston Federal with the box number. Can you get into it? Marlowe asked. That's the thing. He listed me as a co-owner when we got engaged. He said it was for emergencies. I can access it legally. The next day they met at Boston Federal. The safe deposit box contained exactly what they needed: original documents showing a pattern of fraud extending beyond Eleanor's case. There were forged signatures, falsified financial statements, and most damning of all, a flash drive containing templates for creating fake power of attorney documents. This isn't just about Grandma, Marlowe realized. This is a systematic operation. With this evidence, their leverage increased exponentially. Tyler wasn't just facing family consequences, he was looking at serious federal charges if they took everything to the authorities. The following Sunday arrived with clear skies and a sense of reckoning. Marlowe had requested a family meeting, including Eleanor this time. They gathered in Eleanor's living room, the house that Tyler had nearly stolen from her. Tyler arrived last, looking haggard and defiant. Emma sat beside Marlowe, a united front that clearly unsettled him. I see you've been conspiring, he said, nodding toward Emma. I prefer to call it discovering the truth, Emma replied coolly. Marlowe stood commanding the room's attention. Tyler, we know everything. The offshore accounts. The safe deposit box contents. Victor Chen, your accomplice in document forgery. Tyler's face drained of color. You had no right to access my private. Save it, Marlowe interrupted. We're beyond that now. Here's the situation. We have documented evidence of at least 7 separate instances of fraud and forgery, including Grandma's case. The total exceeds $1 million. She placed a folder on the coffee table. Inside is a comprehensive plan for restitution. You will liquidate the offshore accounts. You will sell the boat, the Berkshires property, and any other assets purchased with stolen funds. Every victim will be repaid in full, starting with Grandma. Tyler laughed bitterly. And why would I agree to this? Because Eleanor spoke up, her voice stronger than it had been in years. The alternative is that we take this evidence to the FBI today. Financial fraud across state lines is their jurisdiction, I believe. Richard Sinclair, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Tyler, you need to do as they ask. I've reviewed the evidence. This isn't something I can make disappear with a phone call to a colleague. So that's it, Tyler spat. You're all turning against me, even you, Dad. After everything you've done to protect me all these years. A heavy silence fell across the room. Marlowe looked sharply at her father. What does he mean? Dad. Vivian reached for her husband's hand. Richard, don't. But Richard Sinclair seemed to deflate before their eyes. There have been incidents before. Nothing of this magnitude, but problems. At college. At his first job. I made calls. Paid people to look the other way. You enabled this, Marlowe said, the final puzzle piece clicking into place. You taught him he could get away with anything. I thought I was protecting him, Richard said quietly. I never imagined it would go this far. Tyler looked around the room, calculating his options. Fine. I'll sign your restitution agreement. But I want immunity from prosecution. That's not how this works, Marlowe replied. You'll make restitution because it's right, and because it's your only chance to avoid prison. Whether we proceed with legal action afterward depends on how completely you comply. Over the next 2 hours they hammered out the details. Tyler would surrender control of all accounts. He would provide a complete list of victims. He would sign a legally binding confession that would be held in escrow to be filed only if he failed to complete the restitution plan. As for Emma, she announced her decision to move into Eleanor's guest room temporarily. I need space to figure out my next steps, she explained. And Eleanor has kindly offered to help me prepare for the baby. Tyler seemed genuinely shocked by this development. The baby is mine too, he protested. Yes, Emma acknowledged. And you'll have a relationship with your child. But our relationship is over, Tyler. I can't build a life with someone I can't trust. When the documents were signed and the meeting concluded, Marlowe's parents approached her awkwardly. We owe you an apology, her mother began. We've been unfair to you for so long, always expecting you to accommodate Tyler's needs above your own. It's going to take time, Marlowe replied honestly. I can't pretend the last 34 years didn't happen, but I'm willing to try building something healthier moving forward. As everyone dispersed, Eleanor asked Marlowe to stay behind. When they were alone, she took Marlowe's hands in her own. You saved my house, she said simply. But more importantly, you stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. I couldn't be prouder. I learned from the best, Marlowe replied, embracing her grandmother. And I promise this house will always be protected as long as I'm around. 3 months later, the restitution plan was proceeding according to schedule. Tyler had liquidated the offshore accounts and sold most of the fraudulently purchased assets. Eleanor's loans were being paid off, and the other victims Tyler had defrauded were receiving compensation. Emma had found her own apartment with Marlowe's help. The two women had developed a genuine friendship, united initially by Tyler's betrayal, but sustained by mutual respect and affection. As for Marlowe's parents, they were in family therapy, confronting decades of enabling behavior and favoritism. The process was painful but necessary, and small steps toward healing were being made. On a sunny afternoon, Marlowe was showing Emma potential nursery designs for her new apartment when her phone rang. It was Tyler. I need to talk to you, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. In person, it's important. Marlowe agreed to meet him at a public park the following day. When she arrived, she found her brother sitting alone on a bench looking thoughtful rather than arrogant, for perhaps the first time in his adult life. I've been seeing a therapist, he began without preamble. Part of my agreement with the family, as you know. But something unexpected happened. I'm actually learning things. About myself. About why I did what I did. Marlowe sat beside him, maintaining a cautious distance. I'm listening. I've spent my whole life feeling entitled to more. Always more. No matter what I had, it was never enough. Tyler stared at his hands. The therapist thinks it's because Mom and Dad made everything so easy. I never learned to value what I earned, because I never really had to earn anything. That sounds accurate, Marlowe agreed. Except you, Tyler continued, surprising her. You were the opposite. You worked for everything. And I resented you for it because deep down I knew your achievements were real in a way mine never were. Marlowe hadn't expected this level of self-awareness from her brother. Are you actually apologizing? I'm trying to, Tyler admitted. I'm not good at it. But yes, I'm sorry. For the fraud, for trying to take your apartment, for a lifetime of taking you for granted. You didn't deserve any of it. Marlowe studied her brother's face, looking for signs of manipulation. Instead, she saw something unfamiliar, genuine remorse. I can't forgive everything overnight, she said, finally. But I appreciate you saying these things. It's a start. As they sat in companionable silence for a moment, Marlowe realized something profound had shifted. The family dynamics that had defined her entire life had been permanently altered. For the first time, she felt truly seen by her grandmother, by her parents, even by Tyler. The apartment she had fought so hard to keep was still hers. But more importantly, she had claimed something far more valuable, her rightful place in the family, not as the accommodating daughter who would always sacrifice for others, but as a woman of strength and principle who demanded respect. Justice in its own way had been served. Marlowe stood in the doorway of her grandmother's living room, smiling at the scene before her. Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair, teaching Emma's 6-month-old daughter Lily how to play patty cake. The baby's delighted giggles filled the room, a sound of pure joy that never failed to warm Marlowe's heart. She's getting so big, Marlowe remarked, entering with a tray of tea. And smart, Eleanor added proudly. Just like her mother. The past year had brought remarkable changes. Tyler had completed the restitution plan ahead of schedule, paying back every victim in full. He continued therapy and had recently started a legitimate small business, a humbler venture than his financial career, but one built on honest work rather than deception. Marlowe's parents had made genuine efforts to repair their relationship with her, learning slowly to treat both their children with equal consideration. Family dinners continued, but with new boundaries and healthier dynamics. Emma had become an unexpected sister figure to Marlowe, and they spoke nearly every day. Tyler had visitation rights with Lily and was working to be a responsible father, though his relationship with Emma remained strictly co-parenting. As for Marlowe's apartment, the catalyst that had brought everything to light, she still lived there happily. The second bedroom remained her home office, where she had recently begun work on a passion project, designing affordable housing for seniors, inspired by her grandmother's struggle. "You know," Eleanor said as she handed baby Lily back to Emma, "sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. Look at us now, stronger and closer than ever before." Marlowe nodded, reflecting on how a simple, entitled request had exposed decades of family dysfunction and ultimately led to healing. She had stood her ground, fought for justice, and in doing so transformed not just her own life but the lives of everyone she loved. "You're right, Grandma," she agreed. "Sometimes you have to break something completely to rebuild it better than it was before." You know, sharing this story with you all has been incredibly healing for me. Have you ever experienced family betrayal that ultimately led to positive change? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Your support means everything. And remember, sometimes standing your ground isn't selfish, it's the first step toward justice and healing for everyone involved. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. Until next time.